What's going on, everybody? Today we got ourselves the 2019 NCAA Tournament bracket here ready to roll, as we're going to have our predictions out and about. Bracket just came out. We're pretty excited. We always wait all year for this tournament. This is a tournament unlike any other in sports in general, and hopefully we have ourselves a little bit of fun making predictions. Of course, these first couple of days are all about filling out your brackets, and hopefully someone somewhere wins some money, wins something, and hopefully we can go ahead and do something with that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll through the bracket. I'm going to go one round at a time, and then we are going to go ahead and go all the way to the championship game and do it that way. So we'll start in the East region. Duke, the number 1 seed here, and they're going to play the play-in game there. And it's funny, the North Carolina Central coach there wanted nothing to do with Duke, and if they win their opening game, that's exactly who they're going to get. But we're going to go ahead and roll with Duke. I'm not going to talk about this one too much. Duke, I believe, are way too strong for a team like this. And I'm not going to talk about any of the 1-16s because I don't think too many of them got good matchups here. UNC or Iona probably have the best opportunity to me, and they can really score the basketball a lot of the time, but they got a bad matchup in North Carolina, and the other ones I don't rate too highly. Though Virginia upset recently, the last couple of years they were the 1 and lost to the 16. They'll probably win again, though this time I don't think Matt Gardner-Webb match up too well. So we'll go with Duke, and they'll play the winner of the 8-9 VCU and Central Florida. This is a pretty tough one to pick, but I'm going to lean VCU's way. I'm just more confident in the way they play basketball. And then we got the 5-12 Mississippi State and Liberty. This is an interesting one. I like Liberty. Just won their tournament recently, and Mississippi State are a team that do not play well against big teams, of course, but they also struggle with some of the smaller teams. They have a couple of wins in there that have vaulted them into this position, but no huge wins, no really good wins. It's a very strange team. I don't think they're overly great. I think they're pretty overrated here. But I like Mississippi State to go out here. I think Liberty are going to be the one to upset them here. I think sometimes that comes around to bite some of these teams in the butt. Not playing well against big teams, kind of scraping by and just putting on a resume almost that just says we're okay but not great. I think those teams tend to be a little bit overrated, and I think Mississippi State go out here. So our first upset, we got Liberty over Mississippi State. This one, Virginia Tech and St. Louis, is a pretty tough one. Both like to play slow kind of basketball, but I think St. Louis got a bit unlucky with their draw, and Virginia Tech will probably feel pretty good about their little quadrant here, the 4-13, 5-12. I think they'll feel pretty good about it. I like Virginia Tech to go through. I think they just play their brand of basketball a little bit better, and I think in the end it'll cost St. Louis just a little bit. They'll put up a good fight. Virginia Tech like to keep everyone in and around the game, but I like Virginia Tech here to move on. Maryland, and they'll play the winner of Belmont and Temple. Belmont, I believe, win the Temple game. And Maryland are another one of those teams we were talking about with Mississippi State. No huge wins, and then they kind of lose games they shouldn't. Just one of those resumes that just gets you in. Nothing's too spectacular. No one looks twice at it, but nothing really great. And Belmont are a team, lost to Murray State, who are quite good in their tournament. And Murray State are a good team down there as well. Of course, they've got a top 5 pick, definitely leading the point, but Belmont, of course, played really well, played well in conference, and they're a bit on a roll. They did lose their last game, of course, but sometimes those games in the championship game a little bit nervy. Maybe they just need to get used to it, that sort of thing. But I like Belmont here. I think they're going to beat Maryland. Maryland, another one of those teams like Mississippi State, I think a bit overrated. I like Belmont here to move on, the 11 seed to go through. LSU to play Yale. Yale put up 95 points in their championship game against Harvard today, and that's the kind of team that can beat LSU. And LSU, of course, going through the scandal. No one knows how everyone's going to play out there until game time. But LSU, I feel they're really long, really athletic. I think if LSU were not dealing with this scandal right now, the coach, some of their players, I think they'd be a real genuine threat for the Final Four. They're a really good team, long, athletic, difficult to break down. It'd be a really good bet, but they're playing a little bit worse as of yet. But I like them to beat Yale here. I think they'll move forward and go on to play Belmont in the round of 32. Louisville and Minnesota. Louisville are another tough team to crack. A lot of teams in this tournament, difficult to deal with, difficult to decipher, and they've got some good wins in there. Louisville, they were up as high as number 16 in the ranking, I believe, and then they have some bad losses in there as well. A very difficult team. And Minnesota, of course, Pitino's son over there coaching, and they play their own type of basketball over there, a little bit not as high press and not as full metal necessarily as Rick Pitino's old teams, but they play some good basketball. But I think Louisville here kind of just sneak through. Minnesota, sometimes they have trouble shooting the ball, and if you're in one of those high court or high pace, fast moving games there, it's difficult with them sometimes. They have nights where they don't shoot very well, and it's difficult to back a team like that. I like Louisville to move on. And then I'm just going to move with Michigan State here. Just beat Michigan 3 times, just won their tournament, though they could have been on the one line. Definitely could have been, and they got unlucky here in Duke's bracket, but I think they walk past Bradley easy. Now, we jump over to the South region, which I think is going to be the most difficult region to decipher. Virginia, of course, the number 1 seed. I'm going to move forward. But a lot of teams in here that play slow basketball, a lot of teams in here that are definitely beatable. It's going to be a very difficult region to deal with. I'm going to go into the next game, the 8-9 Ole Miss and Oklahoma. Oklahoma are at a 9 here, and I look through and see their wins, losses. This team is not very good, and I would personally wouldn't even put them in the bracket, but they got Ole Miss, who did decently well. I think Ole Miss are the better team. I just can't, for the life of me, look at Oklahoma and pick them to win a basketball game in this tournament. I'm just going to skip forward and put Ole Miss through. Don't even have to talk about that one. I feel Oklahoma, I just don't know what they're doing there. But they are here, but I think Ole Miss are going to be the one to win that basketball game. Oregon and Wisconsin here. This is a difficult one as well. Oregon, very athletic. Some of those Pac-12 teams out there tend to be rather athletic. Only a couple of them in the tournament. They're not very good this year around, but they're difficult to play against because of the length they have on defense, of course. It's just if they're going to show up, can they shoot? Wisconsin will slow the game down and make it very, very winnable for anybody they play. And this is a difficult kind of draw for Wisconsin. When they play slow basketball, they've got to create shots, and teams like Oregon can really disrupt them with their length and things of that nature. I'm going to sneak in here Oregon, who just sneaks into the tournament after beating Washington by 20 last night. I think they're going to win their first round game as well, and I like them to beat Wisconsin here. Another 12 over a 5. I like them to go through to the round of 32. K-State and UC Irving, another upset potential game. Kansas State, it's the way they play basketball as well. They keep everyone close, but they don't play super great defensively, so they're very prone for upsets. And UC Irving have the ability to score a ton of points. And if Kansas State aren't on their game defensively, UC Irving will shoot lights out. They have the ability to really go at you, and if you leave them space, they're going to beat you. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I like UC Irving to go through. I like the 13 over the 4 here, and that'll put a 12 and 13 in the round of 32 there. Villanova and St. Mary's. This is a difficult one because a lot of people are torn on Villanova. I don't think Villanova are very, very good. A lot of people think they're very underseeded. It's a very, very split kind of thing, and I think 6 for me is the right place for a team like Villanova, who have some bad losses on their resume, as well as a couple of good wins, so it's very much in the middle. St. Mary's sneaking into this tournament after beating Gonzaga in the final there, and they are on a bit of a roll, and I'm going to lean St. Mary's way. I like them to beat Villanova. It's just I have a hard time backing Villanova. They're so hot and cold. They have the ability in this bracket here to go all the way to the Final Four. They have the ability to go out to St. Mary's. I think they do go out to St. Mary's here. I like the 11 to move forward. Purdue, Coming next, playing Old Dominion. Purdue are a good basketball team. I'm just going to push them through. Old Dominion, going to be honest, don't know too much about Old Dominion this year, but Purdue are a good basketball team. They definitely have the ability to get everybody. A lot of teams in this bracket have the ability to get to the Final Four, but this is a good basketball team. They hold you to very few possessions, very few points. And they're very, very efficient on offense. I like Purdue here to move forward to play St. Mary's. Cincinnati and Iowa. Iowa, another one of those strange teams that are very difficult to decipher. Cincinnati winning their tournament, beating Houston again last night or the night before, I forgot which. And they move on, and here they are in the tournament, very long. The man who recruits over there does a really good job of getting pure athletes to come to Cincinnati. They're all very long, and they're getting better and better at shooting as the years go by. Originally, they were really bad at it, and they're slowly getting better. And if they're on, they can beat anyone in the country because defensively, with the length, they're very difficult to deal with. I like Cincinnati to go through here and play Tennessee, who I'm just going to move through on Colgate. I don't have any twos going out necessarily either, so we're going to go that way. Tennessee to play Cincinnati in the round of 32. North Carolina, we move through. Utah State and Washington. Utah State, I was very, very pleasantly, not necessarily surprised. I just enjoy seeing them in there. They're a good basketball team, and they're playing Washington, who I feel are a bit overrated. The Pac-12 in general is very poor. For them to not win it shows them just a little bit there. I think Utah State have the ability, and I think they're going to go ahead and beat Washington here and move on to play North Carolina like Utah State. Auburn to play New Mexico State. Auburn coming off a really impressive set of victories as they went ahead, beat LSU, beat Tennessee twice, all in the last month. They're on a bit of a roll and a very difficult team. You do not want to see this team come this tournament. I like them to breeze past New Mexico State. They hold you to low scoring. They're very good on defense. They gave Duke a real good scare earlier on in the year. This is a very tough team. I like Auburn to move forward. Kansas, another team having a very strange year. A couple of good wins. They hang with some good teams. Kentucky, Michigan State, I believe, was in there. I'm not 100% on that, but they hang with some good teams, and then they drop some weird ones along the way. They've had a really tough time with Iowa State this year. It's a very, very difficult team to decipher. Not the best Kansas team in the last couple of years, but I do like them to beat Northeastern here. Kansas normally have the ability just athletically to break some teams down, play on the fast break. They can do it all. They're just not super efficient at everything this year around like they normally are. I like them to move forward to play Auburn. Iowa State and Ohio State, two teams that are not too bad. Iowa State, the way they play, they have the ability on their day to beat anyone in the country, and then sometimes they're off and they have some weird losses. 6 is a good place for them, I think. But I think they're going to beat their 11 counterparts here, Ohio State, and move forward. Houston, I think the most overrated of the threes. I don't think this team is overly great. They don't have too many great wins on there. Not too many losses, of course, but I don't think their strength of schedule is super great. A couple losses to Cincinnati in there, of course. One of the few teams they really played all year. I think their schedule's a bit packed with not too great teams on there, but if this 14/3 were to happen this year, it would happen right here in this game. But I'm not going to do it. I'm going to go with Houston. I'm just going to send them through. They're good enough to beat Georgia State, I feel. Wofford and Seton Hall. Wofford with a couple of early victories over some pretty good teams, landing them in here as a 7th seed. Seton Hall sneaking their way into the tournament as well. But Wofford, I feel, got a really good matchup here. Seton Hall not super great on defense or on offense. They're relatively in the middle. They don't do anything super great. I think they're just an average team, and I think Wofford are up for this, and they see their seed, and I think they're ready to roll. But I think they beat Seton Hall as well, and they move on to play Kentucky, who breeze past their 15 seed there. Now into the West bracket, the final bracket. Gonzaga, I like them to move forward. Syracuse to play Baylor. This I think is the most lopsided number 8-9. game I would feel. Ole Miss and Oklahoma, I think that leans Ole Miss's way. But Syracuse, the zone, it's so difficult for a lot of teams. You got to come and shoot well, and Baylor just don't shoot very well at all. They got to be athletic. They got to get inside, and the only way they're going to beat Syracuse is to hit their shots, and I just don't trust Baylor to do that. I like Syracuse to move forward and play Gonzaga. Marquette and Murray State. Murray State, with their top 3 or 4 draft pick there, leading them at point guard. This is very much upset potential right here, and I'm going to lean Murray State's way. Marquette are a difficult team to decipher as well. They don't play very well, it seems, ever. They've got a couple of good, couple wins over Villanova, I believe. Tight games against some teams they should be putting away. They're one of those teams that keep every game close, but they're not super efficient like some of the other teams that are a little bit better in this type of game style. I like Murray State. I think they come in here and I knock off Marquette. And then Florida State, who had a great run in the tournament there. They knocked out Virginia. They've had some really good wins. They're very long. Ran Duke pretty late last night. They were in the halftime, it was level. In the second half, they really couldn't hit shots. Duke was on another level defensively. But defensively, Florida State, even though Duke were playing so well to start the second half, they were still kind of in it. They kind of just make you miss a couple shots here and there, and when they're on, they're difficult to beat. Florida State, I like them to go through against Vermont and move into that round of 32. Buffalo to play the winner of Arizona State and St. John's. I think St. John's is going to win that. I think they're a little bit more athletic, and I'm just going to lean St. John's way, but I don't think they're going to go ahead and beat Buffalo. Buffalo are a good team. They've got some good wins in there as well in their non-conference. They're very efficient moving the basketball around. I think they mess with a pretty undisciplined St. John's team. It seems like the discipline over there doesn't ever get really better, and that costs them games sometimes. I like Buffalo to move on, and they will play the winner of Texas Tech and Northern Kentucky. I like Texas Tech here. Some of these 3-14s and 2-15s against teams that are really good defensively and pretty efficient offensively tend to be blowouts. I like Texas Tech to blow can't even speak. I like them to blow Northern Kentucky out here. Then they move on to play Buffalo. Nevada and Florida, I've been disappointed in Nevada this year. They've got some bad losses in there. They did well last year to get to where they were, Final 8. I believe they got pretty far in the tournament. They've got some length all over the court. They're all 6'5" to like 7 foot, but they just don't seem to ever click offensively, and it costs them games. And Florida are a decent team here. Ran Auburn to the wire the other day. Should have had 3 free throws to tie that game up and send it to overtime. They're tough to knock out, Florida. They're always pretty scrappy. I like them to beat Nevada here and move on to play Michigan in the round of 32. So here we are. This is what it's looking like. And we're going to skip forward now. Duke to play VCU. I like Duke here to go through. I'm not going to talk too much about that. They're just too athletic, and against a team that's not up there with the athletes, not up there efficiently shooting, efficient defensively, it's going to be very tough. I like Duke to move through. Virginia Tech to play Liberty. I think this suits Virginia Tech, this little quadrant they got. I like them to go through against Liberty. I just think this is built for Virginia Tech, this little quadrant here. I'd be very surprised if they didn't get out of it to play Duke in the round of 16. Then we got Belmont to play LSU. I really kind of want to lean Belmont, but I think there's just too much with LSU. Too athletic. They'll play full court. They'll play quick. They can play slow. It's going to be very difficult for Belmont to keep up. And as I said, in a different light this year, LSU would be a really tough team to knock out. I think they're going to go through to the round of 16, and I think they beat Belmont here. Michigan State and Louisville. Michigan State playing really well as of late. Beat Michigan twice in the last couple of weeks. Won their tournament, of course, this morning, or recently, as you would say, and then I really think they're very difficult to deal with. I like Michigan State to move through. And I believe this will be the only bracket where I have 1, 2, 3, 4. That will not happen anywhere else. Now, on the other side, the South, Virginia to play Ole Miss. I like Virginia to go through. They're not playing well as of late, but I don't think anybody in that little quadrant there has the ability to knock out Virginia. Ole Miss will have its chance, but I don't know. I don't think they're efficient enough on offense. I don't think they're good enough defensively to hold off this Virginia team. I like Virginia to go through. Oregon to play UC Irving. This will be a tough one for UC Irving. I think it's a little bit tougher against Oregon than it was against K-State. I think there's more athletes here at Oregon. I think they can close down spaces. Irving will have to grind out a result here. I'm not sure they can do it. I think they like a fast-paced, open, high-scoring game, and I'm not sure against a team like Oregon they can get it done. I like Oregon to move on to play Virginia. St. Mary's and Purdue. This is a tough one, and I'm going to 100% go with the team that is on a roll. St. Mary's won a lot of games in a row now. I can't remember the amount. They've just beaten a good Gonzaga team who play a little bit like Purdue. Purdue will slow it down, and if St. Mary's are scrappy enough, I think they can go through, and I think this is the bracket where things get out of control, and I'm just going to go with one of those upsets here. St. Mary's into the Sweet 16. That'll be a 1, a 12, and 11 here, and then Cincinnati and Tennessee. Tennessee, a couple of losses as of late. 2 to Auburn. Not playing overly well. Playing a Cincinnati team that is long, athletic, difficult to score on, and that's the kind of team I think Tennessee has struggles with. Auburn, one of those teams, and I think that is the team that Tennessee struggle with, and I think that is the team that knocks Tennessee out of this tournament. They just don't feel really good playing lately, and I'm just going to lean Cincinnati's way, who's also on a roll, and that'll put them into the Sweet 16. So we got Virginia, Oregon, St. Mary's, and Cincinnati in that region into the Sweet 16. North Carolina to play Utah State. I think there's just too many athletes here at North Carolina, and they can score from so many different positions. I like them to breeze past Utah State. And then Auburn and Kansas. We were talking about how well Auburn have been playing lately. Kansas, not one of those teams. They're very iffy here and there. I think Auburn are going to be the one to knock Kansas out this year. And it feels like one of those disappointing years for Kansas. And I think Kansas get knocked out here. Normally when they're the 4, they don't play overly well. And it's just not one of those years for Kansas. Too many weird losses, not too many great wins. I like Auburn to go by and play North Carolina in the Sweet 16. Iowa State to play Houston. Houston a bit overrated for me. Iowa State can beat anyone on their day. I like Iowa State here to knock Houston out and move themselves into the Sweet 16. Kentucky, Wofford. I think this is Kentucky written all over it. Not too much with Wofford. It'll be difficult for them to keep up with so much athleticism here. I like Kentucky to move forward. Now, into the other region, the final region, the West, Gonzaga and Syracuse. I'm going to lean Gonzaga's way, but they're going to have to shoot really well to beat this Syracuse team. They're pretty scrappy, but I'm not sure they're too great. Too many weird losses for Syracuse this year. I like Gonzaga to move forward. Florida State and Murray State. I think the length at Florida will give Murray State some big old issues. I'm not sure the draft pick there. He's going to be so good, that kid. But I don't think he can carry it on his own. There's too much length everywhere else to deal with this Florida State team. I like Florida State to go ahead and beat Gonzaga. Texas Tech and Buffalo. Texas Tech are just so good at their game. They gave Duke a real run earlier on in the year. They slow the game down. They shorten possessions. They're efficient on offense. It's very difficult, and I don't think Buffalo can handle it. I like Texas Tech into the Sweet 16. And Florida and Michigan. Michigan, who have lost to Michigan State a couple times the last few weeks, they haven't been playing well. Another 2 seed that hasn't been playing well. Michigan, Tennessee, one of those teams. I like Michigan to go out here. I think Florida are scrappy enough. I think they're going to go ahead and sneak their way into the Sweet 16 to play Texas Tech. Now that'll be back to the East as we're in the Sweet 16 already, flying through. Duke, Virginia Tech. This was a tough one for me, but I like Duke here. I think they're rejuvenated with Zion Williamson coming back, and Virginia Tech did beat them a couple weeks ago, but that was without Zion, and Zion's been playing absolutely out of control since he's come back. I like Duke to go by here and play Michigan State, who I think got a bit shafted here in a bad bracket for them. LSU, as we were talking about, this is not their year. I don't think. Too many distractions, and I like Michigan State to beat them and play Duke in the Elite Eight. In the other side, Virginia to play Oregon. I think this is all about Virginia. I think Oregon would have to slow them down and play efficiently on offense. I don't see it happening. I like Virginia into the Elite Eight, and they will play the winner of Cincinnati and St. Mary's. I think this is Cincinnati's way. I'm leaning Cincinnati here. This is going to be a tough one. St. Mary's scrappy. Cincinnati are just too long defensively. I like them to go ahead and beat St. Mary's and move into the Elite Eight to play Virginia. Into the Midwest region, North Carolina and Auburn. This is a tough one for me. Auburn are so tough, but I think there's just too much athleticism. You can score from too many places for North Carolina, and Auburn really suffocates you and make you score from all over the place. But I think North Carolina has the ability to do that, and I think they'll get by Auburn into the Elite Eight. And then Kentucky will go ahead and play Iowa State. This is a tough one. Iowa State can play with anybody in the country on their day. You just never know when it's going to show up. They definitely play to their competition, but Kentucky are very, very tough, very athletic, and they've been gone under the radar a little bit towards the end of this season after they started off a bit iffy, but they've been playing really well as of late. But I like Kentucky here to go ahead and beat Iowa State and play UNC, battle Blue Bloods over there in the Elite Eight. Gonzaga, a tough one here against Florida State, who beat them recently in a tournament, and I like them to do it again. Florida State, I like them to move to the Elite Eight. They're on a roll. They've been playing really well lately, and I think they have the ability to keep Gonzaga low in the scoring, and I think they're just too long. I like them to move forward. I like these athletic teams this year, now that I'm looking at it. I like Florida State to beat Gonzaga, move to the Elite Eight, and play the winner of Texas Tech and Florida. Texas Tech are just so good at what they do, and I'm not sure Florida are great at anything. They're just really scrappy. A couple athletes on there, but I don't think they have enough shooting to beat this Texas Tech team. I like them, Texas Tech, into the Elite Eight to play Florida State. That'll be Duke, Michigan State, a game that is tough to predict, but ever since Zion has come back, I'm really leaning Duke's way. It's very difficult to go against this Duke team right now, but I'm going to go ahead and pick them to go to the Final Four. I think they beat Michigan State. It sucks that Michigan State's over here because this is a Final Four team in any other bracket. I think be tough against Carolina perhaps, but I think in any other place they take maybe Gonzaga's bracket there to be in the Final Four, but I can't pick them to get past Duke. I like Duke here. Virginia and Cincinnati. This bracket, I said, is the one, if anything's going to happen, will blow up a little bit. It'll be the South. The West has that potential as well. But I think the South sends a weird team to the Final Four, and I'm going to lean Cincinnati's way. They can match up lengthwise with this Virginia team. The game will be low scoring. It's just a battle of who's better on the day. And I'm just going to lean Cincinnati's way. They're coming out of a conference tournament win, and I think they get to the Final Four here. They're on a roll, and at this point they would have won a crazy amount of games in a row now. I like them to beat Virginia, upset them, and move a 7 seed into the Final Four and go about it that way. And they'll play the winner of North Carolina and Kentucky. This is so tough, this one. So tough. But North Carolina, I'm going to go ahead and lean that way. I think there's a couple of ones ready to roll. I think there are two brackets here that are very top-heavy. It's Duke's bracket and North Carolina's bracket. The other ones are very much up for grabs, this one right here, this is probably the toughest matchup so far to pick. I'm just going to lean North Carolina's way, though. I think they can play more ways than this Kentucky team at the moment. I think they're better scoring on the fast break. I think they're a tad bit more athletic. They can really run the court, and they can score from all over the place. I'm going to lean North Carolina's way, and I think they get past Kentucky and into the Final Four against Cincinnati. And on the other side, Duke will play the winner of Texas Tech and Florida State. Two teams that like to grind games, two teams that have given Duke a real run so far. There's something about Texas Tech. I have a really tough time betting against them in this tournament because this type of style, if you're good at it, is difficult to beat. And Texas Tech are really good at this style. And the only way Texas Tech are going to go out is if they meet some really hot shooting or someone super, super athletic that can run the court and score from anywhere. And I don't think anybody in this bracket has that ability to go ahead and knock Texas Tech off their game. And I like Texas Tech to beat Florida State here and sneak their way into the Final Four. And that'll be Duke to play Texas Tech and Cincinnati to play North Carolina. And I like Duke. We were talking about how athletic you got to beat this Texas Tech team. Duke have it. They can score from all over the court. They have a bit of trouble shooting threes, which is why I think this game is close. But I think in the end, Duke are a little bit on a mission here, and I think they beat Texas Tech to get to the national championship, which would only be fair with this Duke team to get to the national championship and see who they would play. And I think they play North Carolina. I think a fourth go at this Duke-UNC game would be absolutely awesome. There's another... I mean, the game they just played was so good. That was real college basketball, some athletes really running the court, just playing some fun basketball. But I think UNC are just too much for this Cincinnati team. They can score from all over the place athletically. They can match up against this Cincinnati team. I really think if this matchup were to happen, North Carolina would blow this Cincinnati team out of the water and go into the final. And that would be a Duke-North Carolina final. A tough one. How do you pick this game? We're going to see. We're going to pick it right now. I'm just still torn over it, but I'm leaning North Carolina's way, I think. I think I'm going to go with North Carolina to win this tournament. Duke, of course, are Duke. But there's something sometimes about Duke where they feel like you feel like they can lose a lot of games. And it's like when you watch them as a Duke fan, when you watch them, sometimes you're like ready for the loss. You're ready for the letdown. You're just waiting for it almost. And they haven't done too much of it yet. There have been some strange losses in there, a couple mid-season, and that's what I worry about. But I think North Carolina can match up, number one, and two, there's something about this Duke team. It's so good that it's just, for me, due for a letdown. I like North Carolina to go ahead and win the national championship here in Minneapolis and win the 2019 NCAA tournament. And that is how we're going to go, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know how you guys feel in the description down there and or in the comments down there, and let me know how you guys feel, what you disagree with, what you agree with, and things of that nature, guys. But that is it for now. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for more. And peace.